I'm clicking it. I think I'm live. And if that's true, I want to say aloha to all of you who are joining us on this live stream today from the Workforce Development Council. I am thrilled that this is working. I'm hoping that it's working. Can't tell, but I am ecstatic. Love this kind of setup. And if you're watching this on the replay, please feel free to drop in any questions or comments on the chat, the comment section below. We read them, we'll respond to them. And if this is your first time here, you haven't ever done this before, please if you like it, and subscribe to our channel. You know, it does some kind of crazy algorithm thing with YouTube that helps us to get the word out to more people. So super, super excited to have you all here on today. I have a great guest on what is turning into something like a show. You know, it's like a WDC live stream, represent. And when we start talking about these live stream things, one of the things that we want to do is look at the future shows real fast before we go any further. Last week, or just a couple days ago, actually, we had Jason Bradshaw on here. And today we have April Acquavella talking about carpentry and construction, which is ironic because I am a terrible carpenter. And so it's so fun for me to talk to her. Next week, we're looking at a good friend of mine named Chris Berger. He's from San Francisco, California. And he'll be joining us live from there, talking about some of his digital literacy efforts. And closing out the month for us is going to be Bert Lum. And what we want to do here, though, is focus on April. And let me just get into our guest introduction here. Read this out for you guys. April is, I love this transition here, blending marketing, construction, and education. April Acquavella leads the recruitment and retention efforts as a training coordinator with the Hawaii Carpenters Apprenticeship and Training Fund. I love the long name of that there. Beginning in the field of marketing and design, April's career pivoted to the construction industry and teaching at Honolulu Community College, which eventually led to her current position working with schools, community colleges, nonprofits, government agencies, and employers. Her experience across public and private industries, as well as the educational realm, give her exceptional insight and strategies for attracting and training individuals in the skilled arts. And this last thing is really interesting to me. The Hawaii Carpenters Apprenticeship and Training Fund currently has over 1,500 registered apprentices statewide across 3 trades: carpentry, drywall, and mill writing, which I do not even know what that means. And so I want to go right now. And if you're there, hey, do some little hand clap welcomes for our guest, April. April, welcome. So good to have you on here. How's everything?
Good. Great to be here. Thank you.
We were talking before about like these newfangled setups with these live streaming things and the echoing. And so I'm apologizing if it's echoing on your end, but I'm super stoked to have you. Real quick, before we do anything else, can you just tell me what mill writing is? I just read it. I have no idea what that is. Mill writing, did I pronounce that correctly?
Absolutely. So mill writing is, I guess, in the short form, the installation and maintenance of equipment. So it's large scale things. They're working at power plants. They do conveyor systems. It's an old trade, but it's actually a new program for us.
Nice. I read it, and I've read it before. I just didn't know what it was. So I'm super excited to talk to you about carpentry and construction. And like I mentioned in like my little introduction, I am a wannabe but terrible carpenter. Ironic again, or maybe too funny, because my brother-in-law is a full-on carpenter, general contractor, and I frustrate him so much with my terrible construction skills. He has like one of those super expensive hammers. I think it's like a stiletto or something. But so good to have you on here. Hey, before we go any further, I gotta ask you. We're doing a little talk story right now. So, what high school did you go to? That's what I do, and I'm talking story for real. What high school did you go to?
I went to Pro City High School.
Pro City, represent. All right, I won't even do the what year did you graduate, which is a classic, typical follow-up question. I'm going to ignore it unless you want to, call out anybody. A shout out to Pro City Chargers, right?
Yes, the Pro City Chargers. Yeah.
Okay. Good. All right. So here's what we want to do. Today, I'm just hoping to get some of your thoughts on kind of where construction carpentry is today. Maybe where you think it could be heading in the future. the kind of things, the skills that people need to know if they want to get into this, things that they should be adding into their, like, I don't know, resume or skill sets or things like that. We'd spoken a couple months before when I'm gathering information on the future of work here in Hawaii. And I still got to tell you, one of the things that stood out to me was when you said that people don't, throw out the big blueprints on tables anymore. Like they're looking at their computers or their tablets on the field. And so I'm interested to get into that. But if you could just tell us a little bit about how you got into this particular like place that you're in right now. You started from business marketing and now you're in carpentry. So give me just a couple minutes on this intro, help us figure this backstory out.
Yeah, so I started out in the advertising industry. I was a designer, loved that. I followed, like my passion and, like what I wanted to do. I did that for quite a while, probably about 20 years. And then I just decided that I wanted to change a pace. I ended up having my kitchen remodeled and I'm like, wow, this is really cool. And I wanted to learn more about it. I wanted to end up, designing kitchens and bathrooms instead of going back for another 4-year degree. Like, I just need to learn carpentry. So I ended up at Honolulu Community College. They have a trades program there. And it was I don't want to say most eye-opening experience for me. I had never been in a classroom setting where I would say skills with other than, like my, like book reading skills came into play and I was nervous about that. But like I mentioned, it was being at community college was absolutely different from my experience the first time around. So I was a returning student. Besides the fact that I wasn't at a university at a 4-year college, I was at a different place in my life, but I really got to experience the bonding of having a cohort. It was a small class. It was a 2-year program. After I graduated there, I decided that, hey, I want to try the skilled trades. So I ended up working at a millwork shop in Wahiawa. They did custom doors and windows. I did that for a couple of years, but I've always had a passion for teaching. So I had the opportunity to start teaching with where I am now. So the Hawaii Carpenters Apprenticeship and also with HCC teaching graphic design. And I did that. I ended up having my own business, like doing kitchen design. And then this opportunity to actually get more into the apprenticeship and work full time as a training coordinator came about.
That is super cool. Like, it's one of those, like, how do you track this path? Like, when you were a kid, did you always want to be a carpenter? And, like, I always wanted to be a firefighter or a police officer or something like that. It's kind of funny because speaking of kids and jobs, I was overhearing my youngest son, when he must have been like 8 years old. He's 25 now, so it's a while back. But all his friends were all around and they were saying, my dad does this and my dad does this. And one was a firefighter dad and one was a construction dad. And then, and it was all cool. And they came up to my son and they go, hey, Michael, what does your dad do? And he says, my dad talks. Well, it's more than that. You got to make PowerPoints and things like that and all kind of stuff. But, this is an interesting thing. So you actually are a legit carpenter. You can build things. You can frame stuff. My wife just asked me the other day, can you frame? I go, yeah. So
well, I wouldn't necessarily say that. So I went through the program and carpentry spans this like huge variety of skill sets. And what I ended up doing, going to a mill workshop was very specific. It was a shop environment, which is different from like the construction. So most of the construction industry is a field environment. And I actually, honestly, I did entertain that thought for a second. I guess I was in my last semester of school and I said, ooh, like I want to, like get into, like shop and things like that. I had talked to an individual from the Carpenters Union and I asked them, I said, hey, like, do you guys have companies that do mill work specifically? And they said, no, not on this island, not, like at what I was kind of looking for. So I ended up actually, like going to a mill workshop that wasn't part of the White Carpenters. Just because that's, the environment that I wanted to be in. But, carpentry itself, it runs the gamut. It's, like everything from what you kind of think of heavy construction all the way to like, the fine work. I worked with like a CNC machine. It was like a 5-axis gigantic machine that was amazing, and everything in between.
That is okay. Already, I probably should have started out by asking you what carpentry is, because I have in my mind this idea, and what I think it is. You have a belt, you out there sing a hammer or using a nail gun or whatever. And it just, I have all of these images, and maybe this is a little bit of therapy for me actually talking to you as we go through this. So you've done a whole bunch of stuff. You've been exposed to it a lot. Tell us a little bit about your job right now. You're a training coordinator. Is that correct? A recruiter? I mean, tell me a little bit about what your job description says and then what you really do.
Yeah, so as a training coordinator, we basically administer, I guess, like the apprenticeship program. So we work with the training, making sure that the apprentices are, like progressing in their program. We work with the instructors who are teaching our classes, and we're also like counseling and helping out all the apprentices reach their goal to be journey workers. In my specific role, so at our office, we kind of have our like specialties. We're cross-trained so that we all, like work with all the apprentices. But mine specifically is in recruitment and retention. So finding good candidates, and then obviously, like getting them to stay.
The retention part. Are you finding it easy to do now, or is it harder to find candidates? Or are people like wanting to come into construction and carpentry like they used to? I'm curious about that.
I think it's definitely improving, and like I was watching some videos with Mike Rowe, and like I had been watching him for a while from the Dirty Jobs thing.
Yes.
And he once said, or he said multiple times, that it's a PR problem, and I honestly believe that. I mean, granted, I'm from the marketing, like background and field, so I honestly believe it's like a marketing and PR issue that we could help solve. So right now, I have seen I want to say like a greater interest in getting into the trades. I'm not sure if it's because of like the whole coronavirus thing, and like people leaving, or thinking about like their next career, or it's my great skills in recruitment. But I think
both.
it's the former, right?
No ways.
We have seen, like a larger interest, definitely, and in the population as a whole. I think what we want to focus on, obviously, is hitting the youth, like getting them younger, so that, like if this is what they want to do and this is the path for them, why not start sooner rather than later?
Right. I like, which is where I'm at right now. I actually did try and get a construction. I had a construction job. It was a remodel in Manoa. And it was with my friend's uncle's company, like 4 guys. And I told them I was so excited to do this. They got me a job. I needed a job. And I told him, I said, hey, where do I get those little belts? Do you get my tool belt? And I just go to True Value or Hardware? What is it? What is it? And he goes, hey, don't worry about the tool belt and where you can put your hammer. So you're going to get to know Mr. Shovel and Mr. Pick really well. And I'm like, oh, because of my image of what it was, Do you think that COVID, talk about COVID a little bit, and you mentioned it, and what is the reason why there's this maybe an uptick or an interest in this, but just overall in general, let's start there. How has COVID-19 affected like your job, your role as a recruiter, retention, trainer? How has COVID-19 made a difference in what you guys are doing, if anyway?
So for the industry in general, as you know, so construction was deemed essential, and that was, obviously for many reasons, very fortunate for all of our apprentices and our membership. So they did continue working, and so did all of us. Like as the program was administered, our classes were paused for a couple of months, and then it resumed. So I think because of that, then with other industries closing down, we did see people at, like our recruitment in the fall of 2020, who were career changers, like maybe they were laid off and they were looking for something. They realized that construction was still ongoing, and maybe, like they had thought about it like yourself in the past, and they're like, okay, this is our opportunity. So fall and spring, we did see, like a lot of, I would say, career changers, people maybe mid-career stream, change over or think that they want to change over.
Yeah, like maybe me here, because I'm not if Allison Tasaka is watching, I'm still 100% WDC, but I've always wanted to be a construction guy. So how many people are we talking about? Is in the apprenticeship program? I think you mentioned just a little bit. Are there a lot of carpenters? Is there a lot of jobs? Give me some sense of the numbers here. What we're talking about.
So right now we have over 1,500 apprentices, and that's kind of broken between carpenters and drywallers. I would say on Oahu we have maybe like 800 carpenter apprentices,
Wow.
And that will fluctuate, obviously based on like economy, and then like with anything, like we lose people every year, and then so we recruit, and that that has been fairly steady, except for, I would say, like the past two recruitments. We recruit every year, and we've seen kind of like an uptick, so like a greater demand, like to get into the program, which like I'm like absolutely happy to see, because I think that like the more people that are interested in it, like and learn about it, the better like the industry is going to be.
Yeah, I get it. One of the things I'm curious about too is the differences between Hawaii and the rest of the country. Do you have any sense of what that is like? Are we responding the same in 2021 as other states, or really, really different from the rest of the country? Where's Hawaii at?
In terms of the recruitment for construction?
I think all of the above, with a very vague and ambiguous question. I mean, when you think about carpentry, construction, is there anything that stands out to you as like some trend that Hawaii is following or different than the rest of the country?
I think, like I do follow, like what happens on the mainland, and, like as an organization, we're part of, like a North American, like training centers, for the carpenters. And, like heard a lot of talk about, like the struggles that they have with recruitment. Yet here, I do feel as if there is more of an interest. So we don't have as difficult a problem, like getting the word out, so to speak. I think that where the challenges occur is obviously in the training portion of it, like making people realize that they're getting into a skilled trade that, like requires training, and, you want to get up to, like a certain level or proficiency. Sometimes people do look at, the fact that they can make a living wage, which is great. You can work outside. You can kind of like, some people love, like getting out there and feel like they've actually accomplished something, rather than, and not that any other job is bad. I was totally being in that field, but, like I would be kind of like, developing websites, and,
Right.
like, wow, but there's nothing tangible. I mean, there's something to be said, right? For like, oh, I just framed up that house, and then there you see it, and there it is forever. Whereas my websites have now been, updated and whatnot.
Oh, you're so funny.
So there's definitely, like people who, like get that satisfaction, like doing that type of work. So it's just a matter of making people realize, hey, you know what, this is a viable, like career. So I think the interest is kind of there, but I think that people don't realize, how satisfying that career could be.
Right. And when you talk about this apprenticeship program, how long is it? Can you just give me some details on that? I mean, I'm just curious, asking for a friend,
It is a long-term commitment. There's a lot of sacrifice that goes into becoming a journeyman carpenter or earning a journeyman certificate through our program. The classes will take you 4 years. So those are, it's quite a haul, but you're only taking one class every semester. So like one class in fall, one class in spring, you get the summers off. And so it takes like 4 years to get to the end of that. What generally takes people longer is to get the work hours. So you're working at, like a general contractor, say like, Hawaiian Dredging, and then you're reporting hours to us saying, hey guys, like I worked 100 hours, and, like we calculate that. And basically every 1,000 hours, then you get a little, pay raise or a step closer to that journeyman certificate, you have to get 8,000 hours. So yeah, so that's working full time for 4 years. And as you know, right, construction up and down.
Yeah.
So it could take longer. It could take,
Right.
I would say, like 6 years, which isn't unusual at all.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Okay,
So you
so
put that on your calendar, right? You're gonna block
I might
out the
have
next
missed the
6 years.
window of my opportunity here. I'm getting pretty old, so I might not be one of those switchers. But you were talking 8,000 hours, which is interesting because it is very similar to what I think was it Malcolm Gladwell talking about, like getting super skillful. You need 10,000 hours to be expert in anything. And it sounds like you're right on the same kind of path here. So 8,000 hours, that is a long time. Do people ever finish that quicker than that? I'm just curious. 2 hours, not 2 hours, but 2 years, 3 years, or something.
Wow, if they finished it in 2 years, that's a real tiring apprenticeship.
Right.
But they do finish. They do finish a little quicker. Like I have seen, as you know, deadlines come up. Like the building or whatever it is, it needs to get done. So we do have apprentices who, for certain stretches, are putting in like 200 hours a month.
Okay.
Which I think typically like full time, right? It's 1,600, right? I'm sorry, 160. So like they're doing like 10-hour shifts. They're like doing 12-hour shifts.
Okay.
But that'll burn you out
Yeah.
fairly quickly. So we hope that they don't do that. So I would say in the fastest sense, it's usually maybe 3 and 3.5 years.
Gotcha.
But you're going to be fairly tired, right?
It wasn't me. I was just asking for a friend, and I'm not sure if you were reading into this question too soon, but I mean, how much if this is 4 years, and I know they're getting paid, right, in this apprenticeship thing. I mean, can you drop that kind of number? Is that a good question for me to ask? Can you tell me how much, like, approximately apprentice carpenters are making?
I should have did the math because I was gonna do it. Like based on the steps, you start
Right.
at like 220. But like after 1,000 hours, so say you're working, like 6 months full time, then you got a raise and now you're 22 and 73 cents. And then, so every 6 months in theory, you could be getting a raise. By the end of the 4 years, so say you're just employed normal full time, by the end of the 4 years, you're going to be at journeyman pay, which is right now $50.50. So it's a six-figure salary.
Yes. That's like
yes.
my wife was a nurse and she was making that kind of money back in the day, so that's kind of maybe I am asking for a friend. So that's some pretty good money.
It's amazing. I'll put it in a different perspective. If an individual gets in there right out of high school, you're 18. By the time you're 22, you can be making a six-figure salary.
What? And is there enough work? Like if I'm in high school right now and I'm far away from high school, but if I'm in high school right now and I'm looking to try and plan my life, which nobody that I know in high school was ever doing, but looking 4 years from now, 5 years from now, do you think there's going to be enough demand for me to make that kind of money, to have that kind of hours going forward, like 4 years from now? Are you anticipating that?
I think the industry does look good. So, we still have the rail. Hopefully they'll, like finish on track.
Right.
The rail, we have high rises going up. Those are usually, like 2-year projects and more, obviously. We have residential, developments. We have that Core Ridge just started up, I think, this past year. And that's projected, like for many, many years to come. So we do have work out there. I think what it becomes is, like a more competitive environment. Like anything, I think I like to equate it to if you're a ball player, right? You're going to go to the major leagues or you're going to go to the minor leagues. And if everybody wants to go to the major leagues, it just gets really competitive at that point.
Right. So kind of supply and demand. Speaking of nursing, my wife was in nursing school when we first got married, 4.0 student, when I first met her. And within a couple of months, I brought that grade point average down to 3.6. No joke. True story. Sorry, my wife. But, we start talking about, shucks, I just threw myself off with that, thinking about how bad or how mad my wife was on this. When we start looking at the future for these students in high school and going forward 4 years, you're thinking about what's going to be happening, what construction things are up there, and it's supply and demand. Because there was a period where there was a nursing shortage, so everybody went to nursing school. And then there was tons of nurses. And then there was no nurses. Do you see that kind of swing back and forth in carpentry as well?
I hope not. I don't think so. Now that you say it, what we always do is, like when I talk to individuals who are interested in getting into it, I always tell them it's about the work. Like, is this what you want to do? Because ultimately, if you're not happy with whatever you do, it's not going to have any longevity in it. So the individuals that we are heavily trying to attract are the ones who are interested in learning and perpetuating the skilled trades, right? Whether it's, carpentry, like drywall, or, like mill writing. Will I see the swing? I think that I want to say no. It is, like a hard profession, going into there's a lot of risk involved. It's really physical. It's very demanding. So I don't think that, like we'll have any, extra surplus among, like it's not going to be like, oh my God, let's all be carpenters. And, you have people, like me, oh my God, I'm going to be a carpenter or something like that. I think that the system itself naturally kind of like, weeds it out. And I'm realistic to everybody who's interested in coming into this, like you can earn a living wage, but wow, every day you're going to be 18 years old and every day you're going to be so tired when you get home. It is, like no joke. And to be young, like you feel like you have boundless energy. You must be working pretty hard for that to happen.
Okay, that makes sense to me. The swing, the supply, demand. So I don't know if you do this, but do you have like a 1 minute, 2 minute spiel? I mean, what is like your pitch? I know you're going into recruit. And I know you said like you're recruiting, speech a lot. What are the things that you use? If somebody's watching this right now and they're thinking about getting into carpentry or sending this live stream off to somebody who is interested in carpentry, you should check this out. What do you tell them? What is your spiel here? What is the pitch?
I don't have a pitch. I usually, that's a good one. I'm going to work on one.
Okay, good.
I usually see what the person is about. I think the first question we always ask them is, what attracted you to carpentry? And then I just go from there. So whether it's they're just looking for, some of them they're just looking for a job. And then other people will be like, and which I've heard a lot, and you kind of mentioned this, oh, my father was a carpenter. And I love those stories, and they're like, I want to be a carpenter, from that point forward. So I talk to them individually and, like see what their motivations are. Now I know that doesn't scale very well. So I think finding an elevator pitch would be much more efficient.
No, let's just sit down. Let's just talk about long term. The way that you answer that is exactly what I would want personally for people. Like, it's not just like, hey, how much money do you make? Right? Like, what is the hourly rate? Because you're also responsible for retention, which, some people come in, they have buyer's remorse. The sun is too hot. That's kind of crazy. So I got a question here. Let me see if I can pop this up on the screen here. This is from Jeannie. What's up, Jeannie? She says, what is the completion rate for the apprenticeship program? Which is a great question. Like, you have so many people come in, how many people stay? What is it for you?
I don't have the exact numbers, but we graduate about 100. So this past year, we had about a little more over 100, maybe like 115 journeymen. Each year, we do intake, I would say a mix between 100 to about 200. And then people leave the program and they come back to the program. So the numbers get a little bit, I would say, convoluted at that time. But if you kind of think of it in that way, like about 115 do graduate and complete their journeyman certificate. And it does span the range. So some of them do complete it, like within 4 to 6 years. And some take a little bit longer.
Why are you looking at me for? I was in Conway the other day and was at Windward Community College driving around. And I was at Windward for 10 years. It took me 10 years to get my degree. And people who don't know, they're like, oh, what is that? Like a PhD? And I go, yeah, I don't say anything, But I love Windward Community College. Shout out to the WDC. I got another question too from Jeannie. And this is an interesting one. And I knowing Jeannie, I think this is a great question from her. She asked if there's a different approach for women. I mean, this is sometimes, again, stereotypically back in the 80s and stuff, this is like a male gender thing, and it's such a confusing time now. But is there a different approach, or how do you think about this?
We do have a different approach. We want to, attract more women and diversify. I think the biggest thing that we have to is obviously stereotypes, and the stereotypes are not just external. Sometimes they're internal. I was, like at a high school, and I was talking, and I'll do the pitch, like I'll make eye contact. I'll like, hey, you come over. No, I don't say that. I'm like, and so I'll make eye contact with, like, so there's, a young woman, a young female, and I'm like, have you thought about being, a carpenter? And then they'll look at me, and then they'll have this conversation with me, and like a few of them had, like said, oh, like, no, like my family doesn't think that, like women should be in carpentry. And I was, kind of surprised at that mindset, because I could tell that she believed it then at that point too. So for women, I think that, we do go out there. We talk about, like what they want to do with their lives, career wise. Make sure it's a good fit, like the work is not right, like for everyone. And then at that point, like, hey, if it's about the work, then let them know that there's going to be challenges, because you just can't ignore it. And then hopefully give them some tools, and suggestions on how to like overcome those challenges, because it's going to be harder. It's already hard enough. It's going to be even harder for the females to get through.
Yeah, I believe you. Yeah, and I'm like, I'm not probably going to be successful in your apprenticeship program. I'm just not good at this. Or maybe I should. I shouldn't say that. Because I don't have to have skills, because you would train me, right? Yeah, you would help me to achieve my goal.
Absolutely. So the fact that you have a great attitude and good work ethic, that's all really it is. You show up. I mean, it sounds like, really like, I don't want to say, like a broken record, or, like, oh, that's what they always say, but it's so true. You show up, like every day, you don't call in, sick when surf's up, or sorry, that's like the cliche that I've heard. Yeah. So you show up every day, you have a great attitude, like they say, like jump, and you're like, where, and you do what is necessary. That's really it. You're right. So for a training program, that's our goal, like we want to attract people, and then we want to train them in the way that our organization, feels that they should be trained in whatever trade they're in.
Good. You can get rid of those bad habits that I might have had. I don't want to stay on this here, because I'm comfortable with you taking me from zero to proficient in carpentry. I really, really like that. But I'm going to go back to Jeannie's question on this, because like my son the other day was talking about some of his MMA experience, and he's a really good kickboxer, Muay Thai guy. And he was talking to some friends, and I was right next to him, and he was like, yeah, my mom really helped me with my left hook. He didn't say anything about me, and so there was a stereotype there. I that's true. I did not help him with any of his kickboxing, hook things and stuff. But I'm wondering if you had to personally deal with some of those stereotypes as you're coming up in this field, and maybe a little bit about how you had to manage, or did anybody help you, or did you have to learn it, the hard way kind of stuff? How did you deal with the stereotypes?
I think I had a sort of unique, I think, experience when in class, like being with classmates who are, without myself, half my age, like that in itself, and they didn't, know anything about my background. I was just another individual, obviously, like a returning student to them, so I didn't tell them where I was from. But I think the fact that, like I come from, like maybe a business world. So I kind of treat it all like business, like it wasn't school, it wasn't social. So they were, like very professional towards me. So, they were helpful, like they treated me, like very, not one of the guys, because, that wasn't who I was. So I didn't experience any of that when I was in school. And obviously the instructors, like treated all of us, like the same. Like encouraging all of us, regardless of who we were, how old we were, how young we were, female, males. And even in my experience at, like the mill workshop, was the same thing. I think that because of the way I was very low key, I didn't really engage. It was just about the work. And that's just my personality, but I think that definitely helped me, like just focusing on the work. If there's, quote unquote noise going around, then, that was always a good thing. There was one, I guess, situation where somebody had told me, and I didn't realize this because, like I don't experience anything obviously outside of what I experience, right? If I'm there, then that's my environment. So if I'm not there, I don't know. I've never seen it. And my coworker said, "Oh, you realize that the foreman acts different, like now that you're here." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he was like, "Oh, he doesn't throw things anymore." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, they would get frustrated. He's like, "Yeah, you would get frustrated. You just chuck something right across, And I'm like, that's ridiculous because my experience with him, at that point was, oh, he's completely professional. And then my coworker was said, "Yeah, it's because you're here." So I'm glad that I could affect things that way. And if there was any advice, like to any others, is yeah, just to model the type of, behavior or, like how you want other people to treat you. It doesn't always work, right. But it can't hurt.
Yeah, that just seems like great advice regardless of gender. You don't have to come hard. You're going to come swing the hammer, whatever, be loud. But a nice soft approach, do the job, be respectful. That sounds like a way to do pretty much anything through life. If you want to go surfing a pipeline, you're going to have to come in a little bit soft here. You're not going to go out and regulate. So it makes sense to me. It makes a lot of sense. And, when you're thinking about even when you talk about the future, we're looking at the different construction projects that are still happening here all around the state, and maybe a little bit about the things that are happening in the continent. What kind of advice would you give to somebody? Let's start with somebody who you described as like a career switcher. Somebody maybe 30s. Is that what's a typical career switch age? Is it 30, 40, not 50?
I once read that the average age for those entering apprenticeship was 27. And well, it kind of surprised me until I kind of looked at the mix. And I would say that that's kind of true. We have ones who, do come out of like high school and they know what they're doing. And then we have people, yes, in their like 30s that do switch over. I would say that obviously, as like the age goes up higher, it becomes more difficult. And as we all
wait. Why does it get more difficult when the age gets higher?
I think that I don't know if you'd agree, but I have I think that I've talked to enough people. The body does not like bounce back as quickly as it did when someone is like 20. So 40, that like, oh, I twisted my ankle, then oh, okay, yeah, next day I'm totally fine, I'm 20 years old, versus being 40, oh, I twisted my ankle and now I'm like out for the next 3 weeks.
Right.
So that challenge is real. I think it's nothing, it's not ageism. The body is just less resilient, unfortunately. And so if something happens, right, so if there is I tweak my back or something, that could be, like that could affect obviously your longevity in the profession.
Right. How old are the old guys out on the site? The old people.
I'll tell you this. There is an apprentice that's kind of new, so I'm not sure, like what age he was, like when he entered, but he's 60.
What?
And he's as they say, he's a hammer. So he goes out there and he works really, really hard, and bless him. That's, awesome. But there's not many that are like that.
Okay. That is the literal hammer for a hammer. That makes a lot of sense to me. And you start looking at the future. And by the way, if you're watching this again, you're watching this live, please feel free to drop in any comments, questions, anytime, and we'll make sure we can get April to answer these things. What kind of questions do you think you were anticipating that I was going to ask you that maybe I haven't already asked you? Anything?
I have no idea what you're going to ask me.
That's true.
But I think that, yeah, we went through, like thinking about, like the apprenticeship. I think, like how do you get in there? Right. I'm not sure what I anticipated.
This is kind of a weird thing. This whole live thing. You're looking at yourself and trying to talk. What kind of advice would you give to people then? Not the career switcher guys, like maybe in the 28 or something, but what about those who are younger, maybe in high school right now or college? What kind of things would you tell them to be thinking about to prepare for a field, to prepare for a job in your field?
I think, now that you say that, like it kind of relates to whole career switchers. So I see, like some people at an older age and they're like, I actually interviewed one just recently, and he had gone to school for computer science, so like IT and doing things like that. And in fact, he had just finished his bachelor's, and then he comes to our doorstep, and then so I'm looking over his application, and I'm like, oh, this is so interesting. I'm like, like why, like why this? And then he said, he just naturally, I guess, he was kind of into computers as when he was young. And then he ended up buying a house and he ended up doing some of the work, remodeling. And he's like, wow, I kind of like this, I kind of like doing labor. And so that's why he was there. So I think for youth that are like, say, in high school, to really know yourself and know, like, what you want to do for your career, and know that, like one size does not fit all. And that, like, if you like this type of work, that you can actually make a good living at it. So I think that a lot of the youth, they don't like entertain the thought. I think that the first thing to do is entertain the thought.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I'm going to send this over to my youngest son, who is in college right now. Just thinking about it, But I'm not going to lie, the opportunity for a legit living wage here in Hawaii is incredibly appealing. And it has to be for a lot of people looking at those who want to stay here in Hawaii. Not that moving to Vegas or Washington is bad, but if you want to stay in Hawaii, this is a real opportunity. And it does take you some time. But as you're going through that process to become a full-fledged carpenter, you're still getting paid and pretty good money, right? So it's not a bad path.
Oh, absolutely. So we've seen individuals, and actually, I know one who actually did go through, like the program, like learn the skilled trades. Not sure, like why he decided, but like then he decided to go to 4-year college. And that's, nothing wrong with that also. Working, and also, like, yes, saving up the money to, like, go to school later is an option. And actually, I've noticed that, like when you're older, like, 25, like, and you're going to college, or at least, the students that I had seen, you're there now for a reason. Like, those students in my class that were maybe, like 24 or 25 years old, they were there for themselves. Whereas the younger ones, they didn't know why they were there.
Right.
Unfortunately. And like taking time off, isn't the worst thing in the world. I mean, like to really focus and decide, okay, what am I going to do for my life?
For the young ones, do you ever have like parents or family members who discourage people from getting into this trade?
I would say yes. Like I grew up in a generation where our parents maybe, like worked in the skilled trades, and they did so because unlike now where I don't know if it's, there's a lot more money, or if there's a lot more financial aid or scholarships or something like that. Back in the day, I feel like, our parents' generation or my parents' generation, if they didn't have the money right away to go to college, then that's it. Like you're going to go to work, immediately, and go get trained to do something on that end. So for that, like them, like, okay, they didn't go. And then like now how, like individuals are just like, going, like to college just based on, okay, well, like I guess this is the way that I want to go. Isn't really necessarily, like they should entertain, like the thought of, okay, maybe getting in the skilled trades. But, like our parents discouraged us, right? They're like, oh, it was hard work. Don't do this. You don't want to do, you want to go to college. I don't know why, maybe they thought it would be an easier life because they worked so hard. But honestly, I just like really, I mean, like I really admire the fact that they worked so hard.
Yeah.
So I think that it is a social, thing. Like you run into, you know, society that
Yeah.
says, don't do that. Um, but I think that if you have faith in the youth and individual to understand themselves and know
Yeah.
that, I don't want to say we're not that fragile, but hard work, and not that everything is not hard work, everything is hard
Sure.
work, but physical work, it's okay.
I love the philosophy, and you're all through our whole time on this stream here, you're talking about some of the stereotypes, like the stereotypes people have of women coming into carpentry, the stereotypes that sometimes our parents or grandparents or great grandparents have about the trades. And I think one of the things that I've found in a whole bunch of research and talking to people is that the way that we look at the trades is already changing pre-COVID-19, as everybody's looking at how much their student loan debt was, and they end up working not in a place that they thought they were going to be working. Not that coffee shops are bad, but that's just not what they what their long-term plan was. And so then trades are coming up, and it's all good, and it's getting more positive. And then COVID-19 and maybe the disruption in education, I think we're looking at people viewing higher education, 4-year degrees and more, with a little bit more, I don't know, either awareness or hesitancy, and then coming to you and saying, hey, what can we do about this? Like are there other options here, April? Because I think school is going to be different, and university and college is not for everybody in the same way that you're saying carpentry is not. So any last thoughts before we start to wrap up over here? And again, I love your philosophy on this. Any last things that you want to just drop out to people who might be listening, or who are going to send this to somebody who should listen to it? What do you think?
Yeah, I think, like exactly what you said about, I guess, the options after high school. What I do is stress to people about the apprenticeship program. And I didn't know about the apprenticeship, like I guess the motto or registered apprenticeships, before I kind of got into this, that it is a legitimate, educational program. It's, registered by the Department of Labor on the federal level. It's on the state level. It's, a program, where you earn a certificate at the end of the, like at the end of the program. So, it is an option equal to that of any other, like, post-secondary option.
I was sitting there listening to you going, oh, thinking about my options and going, whoa, what? This has been a fantastic introduction to me for carpentry, because again, I was coming at it with my own preconceptions of it, some of the stereotypes of it, and like I can't learn. But your program to me sounds incredibly beneficial and a fantastic opportunity. How do people, and I should have asked you this before we even came on, but how do people get a hold of you or contact you? I mean, what do we got to do to sign up or participate in this? What's the steps?
We have a website, so it's, and maybe I'll add it in later, but it's highcarpenterstraining.com. In fact, if you just like Google Hawaii Carpenters Apprenticeship, we'll come up there. And the information's all there. We have about the 3 different trades and our application process and timing.
Okay, so if I contact them, would I get a hold of you? Is there somebody when I call or email that is that going to be you?
Yes. So
that's good.
Yeah, so it will have a general number, so any one of our training coordinators can ask you questions. But yes, eventually it kind of like ends up in my doorstep. I don't want all the calls to come to me like right now.
That's funny.
Not gonna put that out there. But if you go to the website, you'll have my contact information. So absolutely contact me anytime.
I'll make sure I put that information in the YouTube the comment. I'm not the comment section, but the little description section. I should have done that before, because this is something that I think a lot of people should be coming up and say, hey, listen, I was listening to April on the YouTube and hook me up, because this is a fantastic way for us to look at a part of our future here in Hawaii. So thank you so much, April. It was fantastic to have you on this live stream. Not too bad, huh?
No, it was awesome. Thank you so much.
You were awesome. Hey, so thank you who have stuck with us through this whole thing, those of you who are watching this in the replay, again, if you have any questions or so, please feel free to drop them in the comments on the bottom, and like and subscribe if you did like. And even if you didn't like, maybe just like it and subscribe to it, because it helps our algorithm to, I don't know, get this out to more people, whatever it may be. But just another thing, looking at this, we have this going forward in the future. We got our next week, we're going to be having two really, really fantastic people here as well. Chris Berger and the godfather of digital here in Hawaii, Bert Lum. So again, mahalo all of you for watching, for dropping some of the questions on the bottom. I hope you guys have a great day. One more thing I would ask for you to do is, if you know anybody who is interested in carpentry, or even not sure about their future work, or maybe future career opportunities, then send them this video and hook them up with April and her team over there. Thank you so much for being with us on this. Thank you to the Workforce Development Council. I have that little logo right there because these are the guys. Workforce Development Council here in Hawaii hooking this thing up. So mahalo, a hui ho. We are out. Aloha.